My name is Abigale Calisse. I'm a multidisciplined artist, but I specialize in printmaking. My latest exhibition was at Gallery 2 with the Printing Girls and Echoes of Change at Denzels and Joe Gallery in Melville. And today we are here at APS Artist Proof Studios to do 21 questions with cottontalk Studios. I first realized that I wanted to be an artist, I think, at a really, really young age. I remember having my own little studio in our garage as a 6-year-old with my little plastic table and plastic chairs. I was creating something every day. I remember having my walls plastered in my room with just paintings and drawings that I had done. And I think ever since it was something that I really enjoyed doing, and I just found a way to pursue it throughout my life. So the kind of work that I do or create is often around the themes of gender-based violence and childhood trauma, and also around healing. I really have been enjoying working with lithography and the CMYK process. I think the monotony of the medium and the process helps me come to terms with the kinds of things that I had endured as a child, and it has become a kind of therapy for me. So the repetition of doing a process over and over again is sort of a way of instilling in my head and within me what had happened and coming to terms with that, and also realizing that there is a way to move past it and there is a way to deal with it, and the way that I do that is through my art and through my work, and that is my daily therapy. I would say the printmaking process is quite finicky. I mean, there's a lot of problem solving that comes into printmaking. When something doesn't really come out the way you wanted, you have to find a new way, you have to compromise, find new solutions every day, how to achieve what you're trying to, how to manipulate an image, how to manipulate your print through different mediums like tinting medium or thickening the ink. Those kind of things really do contribute to what the final artwork would become. So I work with photolitho, which is an aluminium plate that is covered in an emulsion. Similar to that of screen printing, the emulsion is applied to the surface, and an acetate is placed on top of that plate, and then is exposed with an ultra UV light. So the light sort of burns the image onto the plate, and once it is developed, the burnt image stays behind on the aluminium plate and the rest is all removed. Then there is the process of adding gum arabic to your plate, which if you know how oil and water work, they don't mix. So when you're inking up your plate, the oil ink goes into the areas that have burnt onto the plate and everywhere else stays clear. So that's how the photolitho process works. So within printmaking, there are many different printmaking mediums. So you get lino cut, you get wood cut, you get lithography, you get screen print, you get cyanotypes. There's a lot to choose from. You get ball grain, printmaking. I mean, like, your options are endless. There's a lot that you can do with printmaking, and there's a lot of mediums that are a lot similar to what I do. So I work with lithography, and the process that I'm using with the CMYK and the bitmap process can also be used in screen printing. And I could also use it with an etching. So had I screen printed my image onto a copper plate, I can also etch that and create an etching on a copper plate with the same image that I have used for lithography on an aluminium plate. So there's a lot of familiarities between each medium, and there's a lot of ways that you can work across mediums and cross-contaminate different kinds of mediums together. I would say my favorite printmaking technique currently is lithography. I really enjoy the process of repeating something over and over again. I mean, to get a final image, you have to make about like 20 tests in the beginning process. And that's just a process of layering colors on top of each other. And if your registration is slightly off, you have to repeat that entire process. So it's a way of working through a process, and if things just don't turn out the way you want them to, you can always start over. And that's sort of a philosophy that I try and maintain within my life. Like, there's always a way to start again and to start fresh. And you can always do it better the second time around, or sometimes you just get it right the first time around. But I definitely say that the CMYK lithography process has been my favorite so far. I would describe my artistic style as it's very conceptual, and not everyone's going to understand it. Like, you do have to ask deeper questions. You can't just witness or experience the work and not know the story behind it. And a lot of my work is quite personal to me, so all the themes and things that I try to communicate or get across through my work is around my life experiences and the kind of things that I've gone through as a child. And I think something that a lot of other people go through as well, that they do try and keep hidden and don't really talk about. But to somebody who doesn't understand art, if they had to see my work, they wouldn't necessarily understand why this is art, but it is conceptually based, and I would have to tell my story, and I would have to explain what is the background of this work, how has it impacted me, and how can it impact other people. What I would say inspires me as an artist would definitely be my lifestyle experiences, or my life experiences, and everything that I've gone through from the age of 5 upwards up until now. I think life is a journey for everyone, and some of us have harder journeys, and it's just great to know that somebody else has experienced what I've experienced. And I mean, that's also sad in itself, but I know that I'm not alone in what I've gone through. So my experiences and everything that I have been through up until now has inspired my work completely, and I found it very freeing and therapeutic to be able to come out and tell people my story, especially after keeping it hidden and sort of closeted for so many years. I think it feels so freeing to be able to tell my story and know that there are people that are going to relate with me, and I can connect with them somehow, and they can connect with me somehow. And together, I guess, collectively, we could work towards a different world where people wouldn't have to go through the things I have gone through, and sort of create that change and know that it's okay to talk about these things. It's okay. It's not necessarily okay that you've experienced them, but you can create change going forward, and you can instill that in your life as well. I would say within the art space, all institutions and art people are very tightly knit. You really have to network. You really need to know somebody within the art space, within the gallery space, to get your work out. And a lot of that can be done through social media. I mean, a lot of galleries will notice you based off the kind of work that you're putting out on your social media, and they would prefer to reach out to you than have you reach out to them. A lot of galleries do not appreciate unsolicited applications, but you have to network. Like, go to art events, go to art fairs, exhibitions, speak to the curators, speak to the owners, and you never know, somebody might give you a shot. But it is quite hard, and your work really does need to speak for itself, and you need to be able to communicate your messages through your work without you being present. I think that's the best way to get your work out into galleries and get your work into gallery spaces. But just networking I think that's like the number one thing. Network, speak to people, make friends, build relationships with people who have influence and can get your work out there and have the power to push you further than you ever could by yourself. But it takes a lot of perseverance as well. You're going to get 100 no's, but out of that 100 no's, you're going to get 10 yeses, and that might just propel you to where you need to be. I would say the best way to protect your art from being either copied or stolen would be when you are selling your work, you have to give a certificate of authenticity. And I think for collectors, know what you're buying. Know that you're getting the artwork straight from an artist, or know that you have the provenance of the artwork so that you know it's not a stolen artwork. But as artists, we do try our best to protect our work and to sort of protect it from being stolen. And yeah, I think that the best way that we can do that is through building relationships with our clients, whoever is buying our work, making sure that we give that certificate of authenticity when the artwork is purchased, and that provenance can carry over from buyer to buyer. The way that I would approach collaborations is usually I look for an artist whose work I feel closely connects to mine or could possibly enhance my conceptions and the kind of messages that I'm trying to convey and get across. I think within the art world, you try and make as many friends as you can. You try and partner with as many artists as you can. And I think through that, you uplift each other as artists so that you grow together, and creating opportunities for other artists to work with you so that their work could sort of gain some kind of exposure as well. But often with collaborations, I really appreciate an artist who is willing to hear my story and who's willing to communicate their own to me, and we find some sort of middle ground to communicate that message together towards our audience and viewers, and people who are interested in art and who are willing to learn about our work. So yeah. So with the Nando's Creativity, there was a running competition that was running throughout the beginning of this year. And I decided to take a shot and just go for it and apply and post my work and tag them as many times as I could. And luckily enough, I was able to become part of the article that they had posted for March. And I think that was a really great opportunity for me. And I was so grateful to Nando's Creativity for noticing my work and creating that sort of exposure to this very sensitive topic of gender-based violence and childhood trauma, and, you know, giving it a platform to speak for itself. I know a lot of institutions and galleries don't really want to get close to that theme because it is quite touchy, but I appreciated it a lot that Nando's was open enough to put that out and to tell my story for me. So I'm currently working on a body of work, and it is a series of 8 parts. I had already put out the first part, and I'm currently busy with the second part here at Artist Proof Studio. The work is images of me as a child, and it closely communicates what I sort of experienced growing up. And it's like that loss of innocence that you have taken away, or it's sort of taken away from you, your innocence, when you have to go through these very traumatic experiences, like witnessing abuse, like witnessing violence, and the different things that happen to you throughout your life. That's what my latest work is about, but it's from the perpetrator's point of view, if I can say it that way. Like, if you've ever seen a lineup of people and you have to pick out who the perpetrator was, with this body of work, I think it's sort of reversed, and the perpetrator is facing his victims, and he isn't able to escape the reality of what he has done and the gravity of what he has done. So that's what this body of work is about, and I chose to focus only on myself, because I can't really tell anyone else's story but apart from myself. So this is my experience, and this is what happened to me, and this is what I have gone through. So I want that person to know that they cannot escape what they've done. They cannot escape everything that I've experienced, and it's sort of to place accountability upon that person. And I don't really believe in like a victim mindset, but I'm able to acknowledge what had happened, and I've come to terms with that. But also now I think it's a point where we need to work together as a community, as artists, and sort of bring justice back to South Africa, and fight for our children, fight for our women. And that's the kind of message that my latest body of work is about. The kinds of materials that I choose to use for my work, I like things that have fragility about them. So previously I had worked with really, really thin handmade paper, and because it's so thin and because it's handmade, it does kind of fall apart and it does tear. Even with the paper I'm using at the moment for this body of work is goat skin. So it's quite thin, it's quite fragile, and it can tear at any moment. But I enjoy that fragility about my materials, like it's able to fall apart. And it closely relates to the concept of the work. There were many points where I fell apart as a person, and that's okay, because I feel like those kind of breakdowns or breakthroughs is what gets you to where you need to be and pushes you towards a new sort of life. But even through my work, had I not gone through the breakdowns and breakthroughs that I had gone through, I wouldn't have made this body of work, and I wouldn't have been talking about these topics and these things that I feel need to be spoken about, need to be publicized, need to be acknowledged, and people need to be made aware. So I went to Wits University, and I think for the first 2 years I was making art that was quite pretty and, as my lecturer would say, very generic. And at the time I didn't understand why my work wasn't being received really well, why I wasn't being sort of recognized for my talent in terms of what I could do skill-wise. And later on, I think it was my third year, I had a breakdown in the studio. So I was working in the print studio at the time, and I think my home experiences and everything that I was going through, as well as like stress from university, it just all came upon me, and I had a breakdown. So I had a panic attack in front of everyone and collapsed in the studio. And I think from that point forward, I was like, I can't be silent about the kinds of things that I'm going through anymore. I can't keep this a secret anymore. And I started with my body of work that was around my trauma. It was around what I was currently experiencing at the time. And it is obviously still a recurring and ongoing thing, but I'm trying to deal with it as best as I can. So I think every work that I've made since then about my trauma, about these experiences, has been challenging, because it is something really difficult to talk about. It's something that is so personal, and something I had kept a secret for 14 years of my life and had not spoken about. So I think every work that I'm making up until now that is discussing these themes of violence, that is discussing the themes of all my experiences, I think it's all been challenging, but it is a process of therapy for me as well. It's difficult. Therapy is difficult. Healing is difficult, but it's something that we need to do. I think one of the most persistent challenges as an artist in terms of creating an income is getting your work sold. So depending on where you're exhibiting, how often you're exhibiting, will influence how much you're able to make and how many artworks you're able to sell. But in terms of me, I would say being able to sustain my art practice, I needed to get an outside job. And I think a lot of artists need to do that. We need outside finance to be able to fund our art careers. And yeah, so I would say, pushing out as much work as you can, but still remaining and keeping that kind of quality within your work and getting them into exhibitions, getting them into art fairs would be the best way to sustain yourself financially, mainly as an artist. But yeah, we are currently shooting in the studio, so if there's any background noise, it is from everyone working in the studio, and it is a shared space, so we'll try and remain mindful of each other. I was funded by NSFAS for all 4 years of my education at Wits University, which I've just completed. So I just graduated with honors in fine arts, and I was really grateful to NSFAS for being able to fund my art education. But going forward, I definitely would love to apply for residencies and apply for grants with the sports, arts and culture, or as many funding opportunities that I can get to further push my art career. I think in the process that I'm currently working with, there are only 4 colors that I can work with. So that is the CMYK process, which is cyan, magenta, yellow and black. So those are the colors that I'm currently working with and can only work with for this process. But I am experimenting and slightly tinting those colors. For example, with cyan, I really do prefer it to be a much darker cyan than straight out of the tin or straight out of the tube. I really enjoy manipulating the colors and playing around with them in order to achieve my final image. A particular struggle that I've overcome in my art career, I think there have been a few, but some that I can think of at the top of my head would be criticism from lecturers. I guess some that didn't necessarily understand my art practice or understand the kinds of messages or themes I was trying to communicate. But I also really appreciated their feedback and their criticism, especially within the first 2 or 3 years of my art education, and how they told me that this work wasn't really fulfilling and it wasn't really pushing my skill anywhere. And I think once I had acknowledged that I was able to make this new body of work, and I was able to make work that was of substance and it held something, it had a message to convey. It wasn't just pretty. And I think a lot of the work I make now, it's not pretty. The themes are really dark. The themes are quite emotional and heavy. I think even for viewers and even for galleries to take on, it's quite a heavy theme. And if the curators or the gallery isn't able to pay it justice, I feel like that's something that weighs on them. And going forward, I hope to find more institutions and galleries that are willing to showcase my work and discuss these topics and themes with me. So yeah, I think that would be my biggest challenge that I've overcome. But going forward, I'm open to criticism. I'm open to hear what people have to say, because it really does benefit me at the end of the day, and it does benefit my practice and my work. At the moment, I try and pursue as many opportunities as I can. Whatever comes my way, I know that it is going to benefit me and it's going to push me forward in some way or another. and I'm quite open to learning new things, learning new processes, learning how to do things differently. So every opportunity does benefit me. I think at this point in time in my art career, there haven't been that many that I've turned away. If so, it was mainly based off the commission or signage, but I try and take as many opportunities as I can. I would say, and even like through the process of my work, is repetition isn't always a bad thing, and you can always start over, you can always begin again. And I think that's something that I'm trying to do for myself. I'm trying to pave a new way for me, a new life. So I think my motto would be, you can always start over. Nothing is set in stone. You can always begin again. And any advice that I could give to other artists or people going through what I've gone through is just keep pushing and keep doing what you need to do. Find a way out of that situation. Find a way to just keep going. Because had I stopped moving forward, had I stopped and stood still and stood in that position that I was in and stayed there, I don't think I'd be where I am today. So just keep pushing, keep fighting, and you're going to get where you need to be eventually. You're going to get out of what you need to be eventually. So yeah, that's all I can say.